and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors. Are you a family caregiver? Are you caregiving for someone who can no longer take care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is Caregiver Solutions Info with Marcia Teele. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teele, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Solutions. I am Marcia Teele, your host for the last 6 years. This show is for caregivers and for people who want to learn more about caregiving, especially when it comes to caregiving for someone who can't care for themselves, such as someone that has dementia, Alzheimer's disease, those types of things that are unexpected sometimes. They come on gradually, but nobody ever expects to have to be a caregiver. And so the show is yours to learn from. We bring wonderful guests onto the program, people that are experts in their field, so you can learn from them on your journey of caregiving. Or if you are a family member, maybe an adult child, and you're away from your parents or grandparents and not sure maybe what's going on with them, and you want to learn about the signs and symptoms of things that you should be looking for as people age in case there is a problem and you want to get a jump on it. So the show is just for you, for families and for caregivers and for other professionals who also want to learn about dementia-related issues so they can actually help their clients. So we're still masking, we're still social distancing, we're still isolating. This is the pandemic we're in. It's been 6 months and it doesn't seem to be getting better. So a lot of people are feeling very isolated, very socially distanced, maybe even depressed. So today we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about how the depression can come on and affect the rest of our lives. We're going to talk about how what we have to do now is affecting how we are feeling now and how it might affect us in the future. And so today it's all about how this COVID-19 is impacting and can impact us, our emotional state, let alone our physical state of being away from people. And here today with me to talk about that is someone who is an expert on this. His name is Jason Fairbanks. Jason is the Bereavement Services Manager at Vitas Healthcare in Palm Beach County, Florida. He is also a church pastor, and he's joining me here on the screen. He's up, and I see you, Jason. Thank you. Hello, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be with you, Marcia, and to be with those that are doing the amazing work of caring for their loved ones.
Yes, it is not easy by any means, and so we're going to talk about some of the things in the show, not only how this COVID is impacting their lives, but also you're going to be giving us, toward the end of the program, some tips and some ideas and things that seniors and families and even healthcare facilities can do to make more connections to deal with these problems. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, and I'm so glad that you're here to do that. So people sometimes say I'm lonely. Sometimes people say I'm alone. my first question is that the same thing? Is there a difference between being alone and being lonely?
They overlap, of course, but there is social isolation, which is the objective experience of that physical separation. And so we've all been experiencing that the past 5 to 6 months. Overnight, when we used to have those physical connections with people, with our loved ones, and then it stopped as facilities started keeping visitors out. And even as if we have loved ones that are living at home, we were told, it's best to stay away if we have a lot of exposure to the public. And so that's the social isolation, that's the physical experience of that. And loneliness is that subjective feeling of being separated from those that we love. And those, of course, overlap, but we have different personalities. We have different experiences of aging. Some of us might not need those connections as much as others do. And so we experience that social isolation in many different ways.
Well, Jason, you're not only a bereavement counselor for many years, you worked with VITAS for 10 years, but also as a church pastor. I'm sure that you've seen your fair share of people dealing with bereavement when someone has passed away, with the grief that goes with it and the sadness and the pain, the emotional pain that goes with all of that. But now you're throwing in COVID-19 issues with the social distancing, with the isolation. How has this pandemic, how has this COVID-19 affected the impact of what you already were dealing with when people were, where they were in bereavement? Because not necessarily they're in bereavement now, right? But they're still feeling the anxiety, the depression, the sadness, all these emotions. So what has this COVID-19 done to that situation?
It's amplified it. So we think of grief as losing a loved one dying, and of course we do grieve when that happens. But grief is when we lose anything that's important to us. So a lot of folks have had the experience of being with their loved ones and visiting them regularly, and that all of a sudden was taken away. So we grieve that loss. Even though someone might not have passed, we grieve, they grieve the experience of being together. And, we want to spend time with our loved ones as they're aging, especially as we get to the latter era of our life. And to not have that causes grief, both for that one that is aging and for those that love them. And then there's the added impact of when we do lose someone, when somebody dies during this time. It's very difficult to grieve because we're not allowed to participate in the normal rituals that we're experiencing of a funeral or a wake or sitting shiva. The social isolation has made that very difficult, and so we can even grieve that experience of not having those rituals.
So we're all losing something. We're losing those connections, is what you're talking about. Everybody has lost something. Some people are even losing the connection of being able to work and go to work, right? And seeing the people that they work with and their friends. So it's really bigger than, if you can imagine, than anything, because everyone is affected with this, right? So you said that it makes things worse. What are the numbers? You have the statistics of how it's making things worse for us?
Yeah, so we've discovered that 8 out of 10 COVID-related deaths are of those that are 65 and older. So obviously something needed to be done to protect our seniors. And so social isolation was put in place. And so our seniors, especially that are in facilities, assisted living facilities and skilled nursing facilities, they stopped visitation, which was necessary to protect the health of our seniors. However, it put them in that place of social isolation that we were talking about, and that social isolation has its own detriments to our well-being. Physically, there's a 50% increased risk of developing dementia for those that are socially isolated, a 29% increased risk of coronary heart disease, and a 32% increased risk of stroke that results from that experience of being socially isolated. So, of course, very difficult decisions to be made between those two realities.
Right. It makes you kind of wonder, what's the worst thing? They're both the better of two evils, I guess you might say. But it's very interesting, those statistics that you just gave us, and very timely, I might add, that in the AARP magazine that just came out in the July-August issue of this year, they had a little tiny snippet about what they call brain drain. And it was very interesting because I just want to share this with you and the viewers. Up in Antarctica, where it's socially isolated all the time, nothing ever changes, the scenery is always the same, and people are very isolated socially. They did a research and found that there was a 7% shrinkage in the hippocampus region of the brain of the research crew. Now, the hippocampus in our brain is the part of the brain, where the memories and all that is stored. And this was a study that was in the New England Journal of Medicine. This study, interestingly enough, was before COVID-19 came around. But how appropriate that they did this study, because they were actually looking at the effect that social isolation would have on people for maybe a future space shuttle, sending people up into space where, they're all by themselves for months and months on end. Well, I think we can apply, those learnings to what we're going through now. But it went on to say, and this was the good news, it went on to say that the shrinkage appears to be reversible once an isolated person is exposed to a variety of scenery and experiences. And so the good news is that people are isolated, they're feeling terrible, they're getting these different emotions that are negative, but there is good news because there's things we can do, and there are things that can reverse these feelings. And we're going to talk about all that and more. So I just thought this was very timely, and I wanted to share because there are studies being done on social isolation.
There are. In fact, the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine just this year, and this was pre-COVID as well, very timely, have a very thick report on social isolation and loneliness in older adults, opportunities for the healthcare system. So it's being recognized that this is a very significant issue with our seniors.
Yeah, and if things aren't going to improve or people can't get what they need, I think, we're going to be seeing the effects of this down the road with healthcare. But we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more to Jason Fairbanks and how COVID-19 is affecting all of us emotionally and what we can do about it. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-5700 2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on caregiversolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
My guest today is Jason Fairbanks. He is the Bereavement Services Manager and Counselor with VITAS Healthcare in Palm Beach County. He's also a church pastor, and he and I are talking today about how COVID-19, with its social isolation and social distancing and all that goes with that, is affecting not only seniors, but their families, virtually pretty much everybody. And so we're talking about what this effect has, but most importantly, we're going to be sharing some of the things we can do about it. Jason, so you shared about how the numbers, there's an increase maybe in dementia, there's an increase in heart disease, but there's other conditions too that can be exasperated or actually brought on by this social distancing and social isolation. What are some other conditions that people might see?
There's several. There's increased blood pressure, obesity, diminished immune system functioning, depression and anxiety, as we might expect. Besides dementia, just in general, poorer cognitive functioning. Inflammation, which, as we're becoming aware, is the cause of many of the ailments of aging, but that social isolation can even have an impact on inflammation and even mortality and length of life.
If someone already had an underlying condition, again, being socially isolated can make it worse, right? And so people have to be really aware of getting worse or maybe even getting initially some other issues. And so I kind of wanted to share today some of the symptoms and signs, because you probably have seen people that were very depressed but didn't even know they were depressed, because sometimes it's masked by other things, right? You're a counselor and you see people, right, that
yes,
they maybe have signs of depression, but they don't think or don't know that they're depressed, right? So I just pulled up the Hamilton rating scale for anxiety, and there are things that a clinical professional, your doctor, can screen you for if you're going through some of the things that Jason was talking about. But if you're not sure, there are some signs that you should probably make yourself aware of. So I just wanted to share a few, Jason, with everyone. I'm sure that you see this, but if someone's anxious, they worry, they anticipate the worst, they're very fearful, and they have a lot of irritability. If someone feels tension, they startle, they have what they call a startle response, they're moved to tears easily, they tremble, they have a lot of restlessness, they can't relax, or sometimes people are fearful, and they're a fear of all kinds of things that maybe they weren't fearful of before, and so maybe new fears happen. A big one is insomnia, people falling asleep that had no problem before, all of a sudden can't fall asleep, or they wake up throughout the night, can't get back to sleep, and maybe this is something new. They're very fatigued, they have nightmares and terrors. Also, the intellectual part of our brain, like you mentioned, Jason, difficulty in concentration, poor
Yes.
memory, because that's that hippocampus back there, and most importantly, a lack of interest in doing things you used to do, waking up early. These are all signs and symptoms, and those are just the first 6 on the Hamilton rating scale for anxiety and depression. Those are just 6, and then there's many, many more. So, you see this in your counseling with caregivers, and so you need to recognize this and you help people through it. How hard is that for you?
So it can be difficult because some of those things overlap just with the natural process of aging as well. And now it's even more difficult because we can't spend that face-to-face time in so many cases with our loved ones. In assessing these issues that you just listed, those are all valuable, is more difficult when you're just talking to your mom over the phone and not sitting in the room with her. So I just think that shows just the importance of really intentional connection and communication during this time as much as it's possible.
There are a lot of times when people just say, I don't know what's wrong with me, I can't concentrate, I don't know what's going on. I mean, that in itself could be a sign of depression. And if you or anyone that you know have these feelings or are saying these types of things, you want to go get it checked out. You want to see your doctor and get that checked out, because it can get worse and worse until it can really create us to have an inability to function during our daily lives.
Exactly, and that process can be so gradual that sometimes if we're spending a lot of time with someone, we miss it because it is so slow. But yes, to seek out from a medical doctor or a psychologist or psychiatrist.
Right. So there are things that people can do, and we're going to be talking about that next, about what people can do to help get over some of these feelings, these negative emotional feelings that they're having, whether you're an individual, whether you are a caregiver, whether you are experiencing, like what you said, Jason, having a family member that's not close by, or someone you can't see anymore because maybe they're in a long-term care facility, and you're hurting on both sides, the family on the outside and the loved one on the inside, and both of them are feeling the effects of this social isolation. It's really, really a tough thing, and we're all so sad about it. Unfortunately, it's what we have to do now. But let's talk right now a little bit about what seniors can do, whether they're home taking care, maybe their loved one at home, or maybe they're not even a caregiver. They could just be a senior being at home, trying to get by, trying to do the right thing with the rules and regulations of social distancing. What are some of the things that a senior can do? Because you said the word earlier, connect, and I think that's a special word. I think that's the key right there, is the connection part. And I think that's what we're talking about. That's missing, right? The connection.
Yes, and I think so. One of the things that we can do, and I really believe strongly in the dignity of our seniors and the dignity of aging. So I think one thing that seniors can do, and that we as caregivers can gift them with, is giving them some of the responsibility for directing these connections. To allow them to be intentional about when we talk and how we talk and what we might talk about. Give them some responsibility for writing a letter to the grandkids, and just empowering them to be able to direct those connections and asking for what they need. And the matriarchs and patriarchs of families can be very significant in that process. So I think connection's important. I think something else is movement. As simple as that is, encouraging our loved ones that are seniors to continue to move. And I know right at the beginning it was it was tough because a lot of times people were isolated to their very room or apartment. And a lady that's a parishioner at my church, I would give her a call, and I would call her, and she was walking the perimeter of her apartment, just so she could keep moving. And now that's been loosened, and people are allowed access to their entire facilities most of the time now, and to walk the halls in the grounds. Mild weight-bearing exercise. I'm sure you've talked about it on the show before, and our caregivers are familiar with that, the importance of that. Tai Chi and chair exercise in yoga for those whose mobility is limited. Just incredibly important.
There are a lot of people that say, I don't feel like exercising. I'm too tired. I don't have time, or I can't be bothered, but I feel terrible, right? And I know these are a lot of excuses, but it's kind of like a catch-22 or a conundrum, if you will, with the exercise part, because if you don't exercise, you're going to feel depressed, and if you do exercise, it's going to get you going, but you've got to get going in order to feel better. So you have to make yourself, and I think that's the hard thing to do right now, is sometimes the motivation to make that movement, because moving will make you feel better. And if you're fatigued and you feel down, that's a sign of depression. So some people say, well, I'm too tired to exercise, but the funny thing is, exercise will make you not tired. It'll give you energy, right? And so I just wanted to throw that in there when you were talking about moving, because you got to do it no matter what. I mean, everybody can start somewhere.
You're absolutely right. It is tough, but we have to keep moving so that we can keep moving. And you're absolutely right. It is a cycle. Something else to think about, and this is very simple as well, but something that has shown to have very positive effects is caring for something that's living. So, having a pet is beyond many of our seniors' abilities and interest right now, but something as simple as having a plant. Having a pot of herbs on the kitchen counter brings some joy and some life into our existence. So that has been found to have really positive effects.
Well, that might work for a lot of people, seeing the greenery and it's pretty. It really wouldn't work for me because I don't have a green thumb, and I would feel worse when I killed it because I wouldn't take good care of it. But for some people, that would be a great thing, a living thing, a plant or a pet, or even the virtual pets that we've talked about on the show before, that some people with dementia find comfort in. The virtual dog or cat that is actually sounds and looks and feels like a real pet, although it's not. So even those types of things can help people. Can't walk them unless you carry it and you walk it yourself. But again, it's another way to get up and move. We're going to take a break here and hear from our sponsor. And when we come back, we're going to hear more from Jason Fairbanks about what people can do to get over this anxiety and depression that you might be experiencing during the social isolation period of COVID-19. So we'll be right back.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on caregiversolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our national sponsor, Arden Courts Memory Care Communities. Arden Courts has about 55 memory care communities all across the United States, and they are all dementia specific. Dementia care is all they do. They are a great resource for families and for caregivers, and they'd like to offer this book to you just because you're watching the show. It's called the 36-Hour Day Book. This is a wonderful resource for family caregivers caring for someone with dementia, Alzheimer's disease. It is chock full of information, definitions, tips, all kinds of things that you can do to make your journey through caregiving a little bit easier. So if you don't have this book, I would strongly recommend you getting it, and it's free just for the asking. All you have to do is email to get it. The email address is delray@arden-courts.com. Again, email address is delray@arden-courts.com. Give them your name, address, telephone number. Tell them you heard about the free offer on the Caregiver Solutions info show, and they'll be happy to mail a book to you absolutely free. It's a great idea to have this to when you need to look something up. If you're having some downtime during the pandemic and you like to read, it's really great reading, and it's tremendously helpful. So send that email today and get the 36-Hour Day Book. My guest today is Jason Fairbanks. Jason is the Bereavement Services Manager and Counselor at Vitas Healthcare in Palm Beach County. He's also a church pastor. He's been in this field at least 10 years, and he's helping families deal with all kinds of things, not just bereavement of someone passing, but we're talking about the bereavement or the grief of losing things. And Jason, I love what you said earlier, is that, you know, during this COVID-19, a lot of things have been taken away from us. Then we're grieving the loss of those things. And I thought that was very insightful for people to realize that they're missing so much. They can't do a lot of the things they used to be able to do. And so that makes us sad. It makes us feel like we're being denied, or part of our lifestyle is being depleted. And this causes a lot of the anxiety, depression, grief, all kinds of negative emotions. And I think I just love how you explain that. So now we want to talk more about what we can do to help ourselves, right? That things we can do to get over these feelings. So we're talking about seniors, and we left off, I think you have your list, which I love, and the last one we talked about was taking care of something, but there's other things the seniors can do in their own space at home to help themselves. What are a couple of the other ones?
One of the things that I wanted to make sure that we mentioned is Marcia, you were talking earlier, especially about anxiety, which as we're isolated can increase. And what I found really helpful for folks is to honestly limit their news consumption. Our elders grew up in a time where they heard a half an hour of news a day, stated objectively by a very comforting presence at 6:30 every night. Now news is available to us 24 hours, and I think causes more fear and anxiety than comfort. So, get your headlines at the top of the hour and then switch the channel to something else. Things that keep our mind active, like jigsaw puzzles and word puzzles. I'm sure you've talked a lot about that on this show. And then also with keeping our mind active, also engaging activities that quiet the mind. and ease that anxiety, such as meditation and activities like that. And technology. Now, technology is not the answer for everything, and our seniors engage with it in different ways. And it's kind of a leap for especially those that are experiencing even the beginning of signs of dementia. But I think if we as caregivers, as families, and as facility staffs can come alongside our seniors and really help them see some of the benefits of that. There's all kinds of music and performing arts that are available now, live music and performing arts that are a great benefit, I think, to engage in and really take us to a different place. And help us to escape the current anxieties that we're in. Something else that people have taken up is virtual travel. So they'll go on the internet and find videos of places where they would like to go, or maybe even were planning on going before all of this happened, and virtually experiencing the reality of those destinations.
So if I was going to do that, Jason, and I wanted to go to Italy, I think I'd make a great big plate of spaghetti and meatballs and garlic bread and put on the tour of Italy and, enjoy that and try to be in the moment and try to pretend I was there as much as possible. You mentioned that as a pastor, you have to use technology to connect at your church and to do services. How has that changed things for you and your congregation?
Well, we had to learn fast, and I have a congregation of mostly older parishioners, and I have been amazed at how they have connected. So we have 80 and 90-year-olds that are on Zoom with us on Sunday mornings, and are able to connect. Now, there's things that we've done to make that easier. There's one gentleman who his kids had bought him an iPad, so I was able to set up the link that all he has to do is push one thing on Sunday morning, and it brings him right to the worship service. For our seniors that just can't make that leap, they can also dial in, so just using the phone. But it's been an amazing stretching experience, I think, for all of us.
And I think the stretching experience is good for us because in a way we're forced sometimes to do something that is uncomfortable or that we're not familiar with. But once we take that leap or take that challenge and are successful, we feel so much better that, look, I did this, and I'm successful at this, and it makes us feel like we're accomplished. So I know sometimes, like you said, seniors have a hard time with technology, but I think they should at least try to do it because they don't want to miss out on that connection. But I also think it's great that you do have the old-fashioned phone that they can connect to church as well, and I love that because some people just either don't have the equipment, maybe they don't have the Wi-Fi for whatever reason, the technology doesn't work for them. So we have to do workarounds, and obviously you figured out a way to do that, and I think that's wonderful. The other thing I want to talk about is, families are feeling a little bit helpless, right, with what to do for their elders, or even, what to do with some of their elderly neighbors. But, there are some other things that people can do to help others, and we want to talk about that in the next couple of minutes. So there are things that families can do as far as connecting, because we want to make that connection. So how does a daughter or a son connect to a mother or a father that lives in a long-term care facility that you can't visit, right? And sometimes being on the phone just isn't enough, and sometimes they don't understand, especially if you have a loved one who's in with a dementia diagnosis and maybe is, in in the realm of a dementia where they don't understand who's talking to them on the phone because they can't see your face. So we want to talk about what can families do in that case. What are some of the ideas that you have, Jason?
Well, I think, first of all, I think it's really important to remember that one of the things that we're discovering is that the quality of connection that we have with our loved ones is at least as important as the quantity. So I think we probably all wish we had more time to spend, but the quality of that time is just as important. And I think it's important to have a plan. To be intentional about that time that we're spending together, whether that's on the phone, or I know facility staffs have been amazing at helping out with technology, so using FaceTime and other video conferencing and video chats. And of course, everyone is at a different place on the spectrum. So for some patients, even with dementia, that brings some comfort. For others, it brings a little bit of anxiety because they just don't understand that. So being sensitive to that. But again, I think maximizing technology to the extent we're able is important. I heard of one daughter and mother that would look at Google Earth, which is a website and an app on tablets and phones. And what they did is they would talk on the phone, and they would look at old houses that they had grown up together in their family over the years. So that was very special. If technology is a problem, taking some family photos and making copies of those so that you and your loved one are looking at the same pictures, and just spend some time on the phone together, looking at those pictures together and sharing those memories. Watching performances together, performing arts together, so you can share Netflix and things like that, and to watch a movie together or a concert together can be very special. Meal delivery services. I know our facilities have delicious food and well-balanced meals, but sometimes it's nice to have something that there's a sentimental connection to. So my mother is in the beginning stages of Alzheimer's, and doesn't like to go out to eat, won't do anything like that, but she loves to go through the drive-thru at McDonald's and get a quarter pounder. And when that's not possible, you can get just about anything delivered now. So 2J's or Flakowitz or whatever meal holds some sentimental value, you can have it delivered right to them.
That's a great idea, because as you're having this meal, you can talk about what it means to you, and you can share that experience together. And even though you have to do it, on the phone, but sharing the same things and having that connection while you're doing the same thing together, I think that's a really, really good idea. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in just a moment with more. Stay with us.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help, because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CaregiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
I'm talking with Jason Fairbanks. He's a bereavement services manager, counselor, church pastor, good guy, and we're talking about COVID-19 and what it does to us as far as being isolated and socially distanced and how we can make these connections. So, Jason, right before the break, you mentioned about communities and facilities that, maybe our loved one happens to be there. What are some of the things that these long-term care facilities are doing to help their residents either connect or help them get through this difficult time?
I've been so impressed with the way facilities have, amidst all of the stresses that our current circumstances bring us, the way that they're stepping up to care for their patients, not just their physical well-being, but their emotional and spiritual well-being as well. I've noticed that a lot of our facilities have become experts at hallway activities. So since, especially at the beginning, weren't congregating in the common spaces anymore, but doing activities in the hallway. So hallway bingo, where people were able to stay in their room, keep their door open, and play a game of bingo and sing-alongs and drumming and instruments. And even I saw one facility where they had remote control car races. So two people would stand in their doorway with the remote controller, and they would race the cars down the hallway.
Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. It's probably a little safer than racing electric wheelchairs with each
exactly.
other, which I've seen before. Those are things that facilities can do and that are doing. So, if you have a loved one in a community, maybe this is some ideas that you could share with them if your community hasn't thought of it, or they have other things that they're doing. But you're right. I think the communities are stepping up to the plate and doing everything that they can to help their loved ones care for not only each other, but for all the residents, and take care of the caregivers that are in there, the ones doing the hands-on care. I know there's special things for them, especially when it comes to services that they need when someone has been lost, to maybe not COVID, but maybe some other illness, and they're passing. So one of your specialties is that you are the bereavement manager, and this is one of the things that you and your staff do when it comes to helping facilities and helping caregivers deal with the death. So I want to take a couple minutes before we have to end today to talk a little bit more about what you do and how you do it, and let everybody know that if they're in need of special services because they are grieving the loss of a loved one, or they just need to reach out, talk about what you do on a daily basis and how you can help people out there.
So two things that we do is, as far as grief support and bereavement services, is of course we accompany our families, the families of patients that are at the end of life, and help them to begin to deal with that, both before that loved one dies and of course after they die as well. But it's not limited to just our patients. All hospices also provide grief and bereavement support for the community. And I was telling Marcia before we came on that I'm always quick to talk about that and to offer that service because we don't often like to talk about grief and bereavement and that's part of all of our life. And so I told her I'm never worried about being overwhelmed with calls. But it really, I think it's an incredible service that we provide. That service is provided free to the community. So feel free to call our office and they'll put you in touch with me, and happy to talk about that. And so one of the benefits of the social distancing is that it's very easy now to find support online support groups. And know many organizations are doing this. VITAS is doing that. You can go to vitas.com/support groups. And we have groups for caregivers, those that are actively caregiving for those that they love, and then just a wealth of bereavement support groups as well, specifically for parental loss and spousal loss. And for men and for women, it's really allowed us to offer more specific groups and services to the community.
That's great, Jason. So there's really no reason people can't connect when they're grieving a loss, because you have offered so many different ways to do it, and it's really important. And I've always stressed support groups, on the program for caregivers to go out. And some people say, well, support group's not my thing, but maybe they haven't joined the right support group. You have to make that connection, because again, it is all about connections, right?
Yes, and I would try a few. It's some facilitators we don't mesh with. Finding the group that's right for us.
Yeah, very good point. So I just want to tell everybody that if you're listening and you hear something that Jason said, something that connects with you, something you want to learn more about, you can call the VITAS Healthcare office in Palm Beach County, where Jason is, and that phone number is 561-364-1479, and ask for those services, and they'll be very happy to help you in any way that they can and give you all kinds of great information. And I really want to thank you, Jason, for being here today. You do a marvelous job. I know a lot of the people that you work with, you all are fantastic. Thank you for sharing today on the Caregiver Solution Info Show about the social distancing and isolation and how it affects us. But the good news is we can do something about it. And I think that sharing the good news is always something that we can take home with us and try to do. I know it's not always easy, right? So thank you for being here. I appreciate you, and keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you very much, Marcia, and thank you for the work that your listeners are doing. Sacred good work of caregiving and accompanying our elders.
Absolutely. I want to thank the listeners and the viewers for tuning in today. You can watch us next Tuesday, every Tuesday, from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time, either on caregiversolutions.info website and watch us, or you can listen on your iHeartRadio app under WNN every Tuesday, 6 to 7 p.m. Don't forget to email and get your free copy of the 36-hour day book. It's a great resource. And there are also archive shows up on YouTube. So if you like to catch some of the other programs, they're up on YouTube. Just put in the search Caregiver Solutions Info Show, and you can watch some of those archive shows as well. So until next week, everybody take care, stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now. Bye, Jason.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teele. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more Caregiver Solutions.